Welcome back to the Enterprise Apps Podcast, where we sit through hours and hours of briefings so you don't have to. This week, we have a ton of news. It's just been a huge news week, and I feel like we don't even have all of it covered, so next week we'll have to add in the new ones because they've just been rolling in, right?
There's been so many and lots of quick takes on enterprise stories, which have stood out this week, like you said. So we'll be talking about AI agents, contact center moves, ERP as usual, enterprise data, security, and supply chain.
Yep. So before we get started, quick disclaimer, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we will discuss publicly traded companies on this show, its content should not be taken as investment advice. And here we go. I'm going to give you a
drum roll.
Playing with the new noisemakers in our little podcast studio here. All right, let's start out with Microsoft. Microsoft announced three big things for 365 Copilot: new agents that bring Microsoft and partner apps directly into Copilot, an Agent 365 control plane with evaluations for governance, and Copilot CoWork. This is one that's got a lot, people have talked a lot about. Cloud-based agentic automation tool that can complete work across multiple apps instead of staying inside each one. And I think we're sort of seeing a little bit of a progression through our topics today about the flow of work, which is interesting. CoWork sits at this center of this wave 3 of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So deeper agent hooks into Office apps, Anthropic Claude models, and Copilot chat. A lot of different enterprise tier packaging. So they're packaging AI productivity, security, governance into this single offering. So really, it's this like shared execution and collaboration layer over the Microsoft estate. And it allows them to, allows users to define policies and actions in which apps and models can and should move work forward on their behalf.
Well, it sounds interesting, but for Microsoft-centric enterprises, the question is how much authority to assign to that Copilot layer over access to systems and of record, which workflows to pilot first and co-work with those agents that you're talking about. So I think as this model matures, architecture and operations, those teams could place more emphasis on the agent policies, the evaluation frameworks, and the model selection. I think all that will be important as the integration work shapes around the needs for the agent fabric. But it's dynamic and it spans Microsoft's role in an organization, and it should help with the workflows and the everyday collaboration patterns.
Yeah, I think that governance part is really important, and we'll see that also across many of these topics that we're talking about. Microsoft also announced Copilot Health. Now, to be really clear, this is a consumer Copilot experience in a separate secure health space that connects to medical records and wearable data like my Whoop that I love, and some people really love their Aura Ring or wherever they get their, what I call shaming data. It tells me when I haven't slept enough, or maybe if I shouldn't have had that second glass of wine or whatever. But what this does is it takes all that data and it provides these personalized, explainable health insights, but under these clear clinical and privacy guardrails. And they're starting with, in the US, with a wait list. I am on the wait list. I got on that thing quick. You have to be careful. I joke that like my dad used to call me Dr. Google because I research everything, but that's not necessarily a safe way to do it. When you can tie it to more clinical workflows, and where Microsoft has already shown within Dragon Copilot, where that focuses on clinicians and clinical workflows, this is showing like where it kind of spans both sides of that health journey, where consumers can be more informed about their data. And then for healthcare enterprises, this could influence how they think about data flows. Also, maybe it brings more informed patients into a conversation, so they're not kind of starting from scratch. Hopefully not, getting a Copilot MD. But I think this is a great way to organize all that information, start that flow of engagement with patients before they even really arrive. also can be treated just as a totally separate consumer tool. But I think what this shows is that Copilot and Microsoft's Health AI is really focused on a very specific health-driven architecture where, like we've discussed this before, the word crash, let's just use that for example. In a medical setting, it could be somebody's crashing, their blood pressure or the crash cart is needed. In automotive, it means that there was an accident. In financial services, it's the stock market, right? So for the AI to be really efficient and understand what the intent is, that those models really have to be vertically built and have those guardrails. So I love this from both. They announced at HIMSS last week some Copilot, Dragon Copilot, and then this consumer experience. So together, I like the signal that it's sending.
I mean, how could you not? It's about health. And I think there's other companies that are doing some things as well. Oracle's got a lot going on. But I think that there's also a softer risk that leaders should keep an eye on. And we've talked about this. It's including shadow medicine patterns where patients or even clinicians lean more on a polished record aware assistant than organizations intend. So the guardrails, the disclaimers, and not for diagnosis language help, like you've been talking about. But the real world use may still drift toward treating these tools as a more of an informal second opinion, which suggests that, a need for better policies and how Copilot style outputs are discussed and actually documented in care settings. All the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think I personally have the risk of like self-diagnosing, but I do like that it gives people the power of their own data and their health inside this governed tool and workflow that you can use. We're always using consumer tools, and then we go to an enterprise tool and we expect the experience to be the same. So I'm looking forward to putting all of my data in it and seeing, what else is wrong with me. The list is long. All right, so on to Sage Research. Interesting study. They've published this state of supply chain report. A lot of data in here. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I'm seeing, we always talk about supply chain and Sage released some new research that highlights, what they've been calling widening the supply chain confidence gap. And, a lot of the enterprises they're seeing that are not ready for the for supply chain, and their data is not prepared enough, and they're not able to handle disruption like they want to. So even after several years of investment, these new investments and the platforms, they're actually struggling with visibility across the suppliers, the logistics networks, the demand signals, et cetera. So I guess what it's coming down to is, how much of these enterprises have their data in order, and the amount that they're showing in this report is a pretty low amount. So from that perspective, I think that there's some music that needs to be, ring into the ears. I'm not sure if you're going to get the drum going, but the data. So what matters is you have to get this data for your analytics, for your automation, for your AI initiatives. That foundation needs to be established out of the gate. Sage is clearly saying this report that supply chain is vulnerable right now because of the statistics that they have in there. We'll put that in the show notes, but also that your data is not at the level it needs to be to handle the next wave of automation that's coming down for the innovation that's available for supply chain.
Some stats that they have in their report that operators are entering 2026 without strong confidence in their ability to respond to supply chain disruptions. Only 19% extremely confident, 31% very confident, 34% somewhat confident, which sounds to me not very confident at all, but 16% not confident at all. So I think without all of these, the clear processes and ownership and decision paths, it's really easy to be in that reaction mode. So
yeah,
some good takeaways in this report, for sure. Some more reading to be done on that. So moving on in our rapid fire. Wait, we need like some more like sounds.
Let's go.
That's a weird one. Okay. So Enterprise Connect was this past week. Lots of news coming out of Enterprise Connect. One that I got a sneak peek at during the RingCentral Analyst event is RingCentral AIR Pro. This is a voice-first omni-channel agentic AI platform. Essentially, it's a succession of their AIR receptionist, which really, just to boil it down in really simple terms, it makes missed calls a thing of the past. Businesses lose so much money on, and also consumer satisfaction on missing calls. So they've taken picking up calls a step further, and they're really taking it to that picking up to and routing the phone into use cases that are tied to revenue and retention. So that looks like scheduling or order changes. It can look like collections or renewals or follow-ups that like sit much closer to the business outcomes. So this is really a way for them to position AIR in those high-value journeys, not just answering the phone, which is also extremely important, and ways to automate things like I need directions or I need hours without people having to go onto a website. And we all think like, oh, it's not so hard to go onto a website. Well, sometimes my aunt, who's 83 years old, she'll ask me what time something's open because otherwise she's got a call. So we have to think about the use cases beyond people who sit in front of a computer all day. And I will tell you, I did see a demo. I've seen it twice now, and a real live demo with not only the setup, which is extremely easy to do, but also real-time language translation. I saw it go from English to Italian, no breaks, no like hit one if you want to speak Italian.
You can't do
that? Oh yeah. God, I wish I had an AI that just would like in my brain transfer in. I would love to speak French and all kinds.
Oh, it'd be so great. But in sales and service situations, this means things like capturing better customer information, confirming those changes, taking payments, triggering next steps in systems like CRM or billing without needing to hand off the call. So like you said, customer service is super important, and AIR Pro works the way RingCentral hopes. This is a pretty interesting thing to watch, and could handle more complex interactions better than humans can, and companies can actually recover revenue from calls that might have dropped, like you talked about, and I think this is a very positive step, specifically in a lot of the stuff that you've talked about with voice and things of that nature.
Yep. And you get so much data from those conversations. And that's where they've also taken it a little step further. And let me see this. I think this is going to be a good audio, good sound.
For next one.
Yeah. Heartbeat for AIR Pro for healthcare. So they took it one step further and took it into a healthcare vertical. These are, again, specific, right? You have to really understand the systems that you're dealing with, but this is tying it into integrations with healthcare systems. So that supports 80 plus EHR and healthcare system integrations and is designed to automate that patient access workflows across not just voice, which is extremely important, but SMS, video, and messaging. So again, another vertical approach, and I think we'll see more vertical approaches here, but this is the first one that they announced.
Well, and I think what's big for the healthcare is the opportunity to simplify the administrative work around the patient journey, right? Okay. So if AI can help verify that information, route requests, schedule appointments, and keep things moving and staying in compliant, which is a big part of it, that's where the value starts to move. And RingCentral is also building this with pre-configured healthcare flows and HIPAA ready, as well. So which shows the understanding of healthcare. I think it's exactly what we're looking for, Dr. Mel, when you go pull parking space at the general hospital in your area. So stay tuned for that. Right?
I can't wait to switch my title from Dr. Google to Copilot MD. I really want to get off that wait list, Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So.
All right, so moving on, Zoom AI canvases. So Zoom also at Enterprise Connect announced a bunch of AI generated docs, slides, AI, and they've named them AI docs, AI slides, AI sheets. These are essentially what you're looking at is you have a Zoom call, or really, to be honest, this can translate across many things. I just this morning published an article in Forbes about having the data from the conversation in order to move that to an actual working plan or document or process. Zoom has really operationalized what they call like conversation to completion. So you no longer have to use your AI summary, put that into another doc, query against it, and then kind of create these downstream actions. So it sits alongside of things like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. So it's this neutral interaction hub that pushes structured outcomes instead of just capturing what was said. It can feed into CRM and all of that. It moves Zoom into a conversation beyond beyond where you have conversations, actually, to where work gets done. And I think we'll see a lot of these AI canvases continue to pop up. And again, my Forbes article from this morning gives a lot of examples of where that's happening, where the work is anchored inside any of these AI systems and tools, but they're not just in the conference room anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it. And Zoom isn't the only one in the race as this communication layer becomes a pretty big priority. But I think the story that I see is everybody wants to be closer to the work itself, not just the conversation around it. And that's what we're seeing. I think that's something to note. And you've hit on it as well.
Yep. I'll give
So
you this. I'll give you this for that one.
let's talk a little bit about Oracle's earnings and their ERP strategy. Their latest quarterly results reinforce something I've been watching for a while, and I do like this. The company is running what I like to call a two-lane ERP strategy, and it's working. So if we look at their numbers in Q3, Oracle Fusion Cloud ERP generated just over $1 billion in revenue, which is no short amount of money, and that's grown about 17% in that area. NetSuite handles a little bit of a different market. They've also grown about the same amount and about 14%. So Fusion ERP continues to gain traction with those large global organizations, and they're modernizing is actually what they're proposing to do for the ones that they're trying to get off premise. And then NetSuite is, on the other hand, moving in the mid-market way. So I think this is a great point, and it shows that the market is moving in ERP, large enterprises, as well as the mid-market, and Oracle's approach. I really like the two-lane way that they're doing it with NetSuite.
It's interesting that they've stayed really true to that split, and they now both platforms that are generating roughly the same amount of revenue shows that there is demand on both sides. Looking here at we're not equities analysts, but looking at it, this is just sort of, it's so interesting across everything that's happening now. It's like, what are the stock market triggers on this? You think like you have a great quarter, we should see a little bump in stock, but these companies are just getting hammered. And it seems to me, and this is a conversation for another time, but stock prices seem to go up on layoffs and not on healthy earnings. And that's just, it's a tough market.
It is, and we'll talk more about ERP in future shows, but it's definitely gaining a lot of ground because a lot of companies, their ERP is the heart of the organization. So it's not going away. So,
well, you know what else is a heart of an organization right now is security. I think it's interesting that security, even in our own organization, used to sit kind of in a swim lane. And although that's still important in terms of the overall security market, what I think is it's now become a shared responsibility. It's not just one person's job. Everybody has to be very aware of the security posture of an organization, and also how you contribute that to that, or maybe put it at risk. But all that said, Google has closed on its acquisition of Wiz, and Wiz has gained some pretty good notoriety lately in terms of its growth and cloud security platform, being known for its agentless scanning, graph-based risk modeling, and all the things. But this has been a big one that's gotten a lot of attention, and I think Google already has a really strong security business, and for Wiz to become sort of this central way that customers see and prioritize cloud risk, and it could shape the way that they think about consolidating security tooling in environments that already span several providers. So interesting one to watch. And I know you're going to be at RSA. That'll be really
Yeah.
a great opportunity for you to kind of boots on the ground, get some insights into what people are talking about and how customers are reacting to this. But also, I'm going to give a quick little from a brand perspective. And you'll check this out at RSA. So I want some pictures. Wiz it's a cool brand. Like
Yeah.
they don't put themselves in this branding category of we're a security company and we have to be, B2B security. That's about as like dull and plain as you can get from a branding perspective, but they actually don't take it that way. It's similar to me when Cisco acquired Splunk. They also acquired some of that brand ethos that was just a little bit more fun. They have this like game on their website where you could do this observability challenge, and it just makes it more real, more tangible. And so I'm excited for you to spend some time with them and learn more. What's your take on this?
Well, so I'm going to see them. I got a meeting with Google and Wiz, but this is a long way away from when we used to have on premises only, and there was one person in charge of security that had put the tape in the briefcase and take it home, right? So for Google, I think Wiz strengthens its cloud security story. You talk about the agent list and makes its platform more appealing to large enterprises that manage these really complex but multi-cloud environments. So the key is to keeping that strong multi-cloud visibility, gradually connecting Wiz to Google's own security and analytics tools. And if that works, Wiz could become a central platform for how companies monitor and then also manage cloud risk. So let's keep moving with Boomi. Data activation for AI agents. They announced some new capabilities in their enterprise platform around what it calls data activation. So what does that mean? So the idea is to make enterprise data, as we talk about, it has to be useful, so available in real time across platforms, APIs, and workflows to support everything from analytics to AI agents. So this data to become more AI ready. So the platform sits in the middle of many environments that connects a lot of data, because everybody's got a lot of data now with ERP, CRM, supply chain, other stuff. And this announcement reinforces that the position to help with these integrations and these orchestration layers that prepares the data to be more AI driven. So with that, what's your thoughts or
The thing I think that is under discussed is the risk that you take when you light up all this data for AI agents. You're increasing your outcomes for good decisions. You're also at the same time increasing the chances of really bad decisions, right? They're just more efficient, bad decisions. They're quicker. But so the opportunity there, I think, is being intentional about what data gets activated for what agents in what moments. And then you're shaping behavior instead of just speeding it up. I really don't like, and this has nothing to do with Boomi in particular, but I really don't like the conversation around productivity and getting more done when it's not discussed in a way that is like, it shouldn't just be about getting more done, but getting smarter work done.
There has to be processes for this data to be used, because the downstream or whatever stream you want to talk about, if that data is not correct, it will have so many negative effects that there, like you said, there has to be a plan, there has to be a strategy around this, or I personally think you're wasting your time. So I think that's what you're saying in a nicer way.
And opening up more risk. So,
yeah.
All right. Teradata vector indexing capabilities.
So they announced Teradata an update to their enterprise vector store. They're adding more capabilities. That's the theme around this. And it's designed to help companies build AI applications directly on top of their existing data platforms, not to move the data. So two of the main additions are hybrid search, which combines traditional keyword search with semantic search based on meaning, and support for modal embeddings. So AI can scan work with text, images, and audio rather than just structured data-based data. So in practical terms, that means you can ingest, more, documents, and then it moves things along. The AI system or agents can look at this context and use it more accurately. And I think that's a big theme for Teradata. Positions them where they don't have to move the data and they have more access to these large volumes that are taken care of in the vector database or AI tools.
It seems like Teradata is trying to close that gap between where AI runs and where the data is governed. And I think that you've got to do that. I mean, we can't stop talking about the governance questions, and that we have to surface earlier. And when you have that visibility, like a control plane or what have you, that gets harder to ignore. So
I don't think it's talked about enough, though. The governance, it's such a big theme. I think it should be put in front of some of the things that we're addressing, like data, because the governance has to control what's below it, and data, I would think, would be below it instead of the reverse.
Yeah, they have to go hand in hand, but you have to have a clear structure and policy around governance. That blows up really quickly.
Yep.
I'd love to talk about some stories from this week where that's blown up for some companies, but we're doing rapid fire and we're going to move on to Zendesk Forethought acquisition. So Zendesk announced its intent to acquire Forethought, which is an agentic customer service startup. I knew this was going to happen with AI, and we'll continue to see this where startups will kind of come out of nowhere, and the really smart ones will have built something that can be absorbed into something else instead of trying to compete massively with some of these larger incumbents.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, again, no investment advice here, but Forethought is a startup. It automates more than 1 billion customer interactions a month for various brands like Upwork and Airtable, Datadog. But they're bringing the tech into the AI products to support more specialized agents. So where Zendesk says this actually pulls its roadmap forward by more than a year. So I like that for Zendesk. If that really threads together the way they think, it could become a service layer that teams can design around instead of just where tickets land. And it gives enterprises room to shape how agents, voice, and digital channels can work together in one environment without building a whole bunch of one-off CX tools around it. Most of these tools, there's a lot of integrations and combinations, and it's why there's so much collaboration in that space, because you have to in order to build something really good. So I think Zendesk probably looked down the road and said, it'll take us a year to build this, but there's this startup that's built something that's already doing a high volume of transactions and has proven itself. So we'll see how long it takes for it to show up.
And I think that's the thought. How quickly can they integrate Forethought into real-time usable capabilities inside Zendesk? So I think that's where we're at, and I think it's a great move. And whether the analytics and governance feel like one system or not, I think eventually it will, and it will be a good experience for the customers.
All right, on to Salesforce Contact Center. Again, a Enterprise Connect announcement. Salesforce announced Agentforce Contact Center, their native contact center product. So they're bringing in AI agents, the human agents. It's always the word agent. You have to be specific about that. AI agents and human agents and channels into CRM data, but it's all in their Customer 360 backbone. So that's for them to handle all of the things, changes, rebookings, updates, any access use case history, all within those same workflow rules. So it runs on that 360 data cloud model that the rest of Salesforce uses. So the customer, everything behind the AI lineup and what they see is all coming from the same amount of data. So from my perspective, for customers who already have invested in Salesforce for service, it creates an option to pull more out of the routing and policy and automation work into that single data model.
Yeah, so one thing this changes is where the real design work for the contact center happens. So if AI and human agents are both operating off the same records and workflows, then the same teams configure those flows in Salesforce. And this has a direct impact on customer experience, which is great. So metrics like resolutions, containment, and customer value start to depend on how well these entitlements, queues, and next best actions are modeled in that environment. So definitely a good move.
Yeah, and interesting also is that Slack is one of the places where this shows up like day to day. Think about how often somebody's in Slack, if they can work together, the agent and the AI can work together in Slack channels, DMs, using the same data and workflows, then service teams can handle customer issues and exceptions in the same way where they're already collaborating. I think it's beating the drum of, yeah, let's see, that this jumping around from tool to tool and where I think that we've covered so much ground here, and where the through line is that AI is moving from these isolated features within apps to a fabric that runs across the core enterprise system. So vendors have a place where the work is done, where the input is into that into that decision and execution layer. It's all happening in the same place where you're doing work. And if it's not happening in that place where you're doing work, you're connecting it to it. So we have less jumping around and more time to do the work. I think
I agree. So the vendors that matter the most they're actually turning AI into more of a programmable layer across policy, workflows, and data access. So when customers actually tune and manage, I think that they'll see a lot of positive things over time. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, and there's a separation around operating and control. So I think that you're saying what I'm saying. I think this is definitely a lot going on, and it's positive.
It gives leaders the ability to make specific kind of decisions, right? Which stacks have a place in that control layer? Which agents do they trust with revenue, risk, healthcare data, customer touch points, and then which platforms give that visibility into how those systems behave over time. So,
yep. Lots of great stuff.
We got through it. Woohoo.
So we'll keep watching across the ERP. The show was great today. We had a lot of good stuff, data platforms, and there's a lot of quarterly things happening from a lot of vendors. We'll keep an eye on those. Thanks for joining us. Melanie Brue, Robert Kramer, Enterprise Apps Podcast, episode 26. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.